Hello, government students. Today we're doing notes 3.2, the presidency in action. Your essential question: how have the powers of the president grown over time? All right, so Article 2 of the Constitution lays out the powers of the executive branch. Article 2 begins by saying the executive powers shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. And with these simple words, the framers established the presidency of the United States. Over the course of American history, people who have fought for a stronger presidency usually have prevailed. We've passed laws and expanded the role of the federal government, and Congress has increased presidential power for the people who have been in this position over time. The ability to use the mass media has been used by presidents since President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So, President FDR used to use the radio. He had his weekly fireside chats where he would connect directly to the American people. And that still continues on today. We've had President Trump using Twitter to connect with the American people instantly. So there's two different views of the presidency. Some presidents, like President Roosevelt, have taken a broad view of the powers that they have inherited as presidents, whereas other presidents, like President Taft, thought that they couldn't exercise any power that was not specifically granted to them within Article 2 of the Constitution. So, what are these powers of the presidency? The president is able to execute the law. That's what the executive branch does. Executing means to enforce the law, administer the law, make sure the law gets carried out. They swear in by taking their oath of office at their inauguration, and they say within that oath of office that they shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And these are our last three presidents here at their inaugurations getting sworn in. Presidents also have something called the ordinance power. So, this is the power to issue executive orders. Executive orders are a directive or a rule, pretty much a law, but they only require the president to sign them in order for them to be an actual, have the weight of the law. They don't need to go through Congress. They don't need to be drafted like a bill, the process that we learned about in Unit 2. It is simply the president saying something should be a law, they sign it into law. The Constitution and acts of Congress have given the president the ordinance power. So these are just some pictures down here of our recent presidents using that power. And we have a Schoolhouse Rock video that's going to show us a little bit about how this works. And the video is not working for it. Again, sorry. We will play it for you at the end of our notes today. Sorry about that. We'll get back to executive orders. All right, so the appointment power. The presidents also have the power to appoint cabinet positions and ambassadors and federal judges. These require Senate approval. So the Senate must the president must name who these people are that they want to nominate. And then the Senate has a vote and they decide who they're going to allow to be ambassadors, cabinet members, federal judges, etc. The president may remove any appointees except for federal judges. So, any member of the cabinet, any ambassadors that the president chooses to have in their executive branch, they can remove those people except for federal judges. Federal judges do have to be removed by Congress instead. Right, so the diplomatic and military powers of the president. The president has the power to make a treaty. So, a treaty is a formal agreement between two or more sovereign states. The president, usually through the Secretary of State, negotiates these agreements between two or more countries. And then treaties must pass by two-thirds of all members present in the Senate. Executive agreements, on the other hand, do not require Senate consent. So, an executive agreement is a pact between the president and the head of another foreign state. So, it's an agreement that the president joins our country into. An example that's been in the news recently, the Paris Climate Agreement. President Biden used an executive order to have us rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement that we had previously been in under President Obama. We had left under President Trump, and now we are back in under President Biden. The president also has the power of recognition, meaning that the president can acknowledge the legal existence of another sovereign state. So President Trump did this 2016. It was a while ago now. So he did this in 2016 or 2017, excuse me, 2017, early into his presidency. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Jerusalem has been a contested area. Different nations have claimed to have the rights to that area, but he used his power of recognition to say that we, as the United States, acknowledge Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel. The president is the commander in chief of the nation's armed forces, so that means the president is in charge of the military. Many presidents have used this power to make undeclared war, so pretty much getting us in conflicts involved in other nations around the world without actually declaring war, so getting around that need for Congress to declare war. The president also has different powers during wartime. The president's powers are far greater during wartime than they are during normal times. And the War Powers Resolution of 1973 limits the president's war making powers. So the president is limited on what conflicts they can get us into abroad. So, just some details to that. This was passed during the Vietnam War when it was coming to light that President Nixon was getting us involved in conflicts in other surrounding nations to Vietnam. So, this says that the president shall consult with Congress before committing American servicemen into hostile situations. And then, once the president sends troops into another country, 48 hours afterwards, the president must report to Congress and tell the details of the circumstances for why they were sent there. And then they must end within 60 days unless Congress authorizes a commitment longer than that. So the president pretty much has the power to send us off into war for about 60 days before Congress has to act. The legislative powers. The president can recommend legislation. So the president gives an address, the State of the Union address, to Congress every year. That usually happens at the beginning of the year, about February, typically February every year. And in this address, the president recommends legislation that they think should be passed. So we can expect during President Biden's State of the Union address, President Biden will probably say something about a COVID relief package, um, something about how we need to get more vaccines out, how we need to get more funding into different aspects of society to get us back and get us through this pandemic. The president also has the veto power, which means if the president does not like a bill that comes from Congress, the president can veto it. This can be overturned, so the veto is a check on the legislative branch, but the legislative branch can also check the executive branch by overturning that veto. If they get two-thirds of Congress to agree in both houses, they can override a presidential veto. President used to have the ability to have a line item veto where they could specifically veto specific portions of a bill that they didn't like, but that was struck down in 1998, so we did get rid of that. But the president also has the power to call Congress into a special session. So if they have adjourned for their session, if they're out on winter break or if they're out on summer break, the president does have the authority to call them back into a special session. Remember, once a president gets a bill, the president has four actions that they can do with that bill. So if the president gets a bill, they can, of course, just sign it, and then it becomes law. The president can, of course, just veto it, and then it doesn't become law, although it can be overridden. So president can sign it, president can veto it. The next two options have to do with time. So they both have to do with 10 days. If the president receives a bill, has 10 days to look it over, 10 days to make a decision, does nothing with it, then it automatically becomes law. If the president receives a bill and Congress adjourns within that 10 days of sending that bill to the president actually doesn't have to sign it. They can do nothing with it and the bill dies. So if it has less than 10 days, that's called a pocket veto. The president can do nothing and that bill dies. If they have more than 10 days, the president does nothing with it, automatically gets signed into law. Right, the judicial powers of the presidency. The president is able to give pardons, so reprieves and pardons. A reprieve is a postponement of the execution of a sentence, whereas a pardon is a legal forgiveness for a crime. So, if we can remember just a few weeks ago, President Trump gave out quite a few pardons right before he left office. Probably the most notable ones were the two he gave to rappers, Lil Wayne and Kodak Black. Remember, he gave them both. Pardons the day before he left office, or I believe it was the morning that he left office. So that's legal forgiveness for a crime, saying, okay, you did this crime, but we're going to go ahead and give you like a get out of jail free card. And this only has to do with federal crimes. The president can't do this for state crimes. State crimes have to be pardoned by the governor of that state. So that's the end of your notes for today. We'll go ahead and pull up that video from Saturday Night Live. Go ahead and read a summary at the end of your notes.